What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I want to talk a little bit about betas for Call of Duty, and more specifically, I wanted to focus on whether or not I feel this year's Call of Duty game, which is most likely going to be Modern Warfare 4, should have a beta. Now normally this would be a no-brainer, the answer would be 100% yes, of course, betas are great for the game, and I generally agree with that, but I have been seeing more and more lately on Twitter and on Reddit, just on various sources, of people saying that they don't want to see a beta. They would rather not have a beta this year and have it like we used to have it with Call of Duty, where the game just launches and then they just fix things as time goes on. So today I wanted to look at the pros and cons of having a beta within the context of Call of Duty. Keep in mind, we're not talking about video games in general, just within the context of Call of Duty. And then I want to share how I feel it should be handled this year with Modern Warfare 4. So first up, let's go over the pros of having a beta. Most of these are quite obvious. Betas allow the devs to stress test servers to make sure that they're going to have the smoothest server launch possible when the game actually comes out. If there's a bunch of server issues throughout a beta, which are likely when you're launching a game for the first time to a very large audience, then that's kind of to be expected. That's forgivable. People are ready for that kind of stuff, as long as that means it's going to be helping them in the future. If that happens when the full game launches, then all hell breaks loose. Everybody's freaking out. People absolutely hate it when they buy a game and it doesn't work at launch because the servers are down or they're just struggling and having a ton of issues and the game is practically, or in some cases, literally unplayable. So betas are great for preventing those major issues at launch. Even though I will say a beta doesn't necessarily 100% prevent them, they do mitigate a lot of the issues that tend to arise when you reach the launch date, and therefore you tend to have a smoother full launch of the game. We see a similar story with bugs. There are often a bunch of bugs when you first launch a game, and if you have a beta, it allows them to squash quite a few of them, especially the more major bugs that have a big impact on the game. Those can usually be picked up within the beta and then fixed for the launch of the game. This is one of the really nice things about having a beta, is you get the game out there into so many hands that even just having a beta for one day for Call of Duty, they can generate more playtime and more data than they'd be able to generate in-house for like an entire year. It's absolutely insane just how much data they can collect from a very short period of time for a beta in Call of Duty because it's such a popular game. And this means they are much more likely to catch and be able to fix bugs that they otherwise may not have even picked up in-house. So in general, those are the primary reasons for having a beta, at least from a development side of things. But of course, another important aspect of the betas is getting player feedback. What parts of the game do players like or dislike, and do they need to make big changes before the launch of the game? In recent years with Call of Duty, we've actually seen some great changes come out of betas. I'm thinking back to COD World War II, for instance. The sprint out times were unbelievably slow, even for SMGs within the first weekend of the beta. They actually gave them a little bit of a buff, although not nearly enough until much later in the game's lifecycle, but they did at least get some feedback on that. They also got some map feedback. They adjusted the map Aachen, and also we even saw a map change in Black Ops 4 for the beta. That was on Seaside. They actually opened up that entire balcony side on Seaside that was previously closed throughout the beta, and I think that was definitely a great change there. Also with Black Ops 4, they were able to adjust a lot of the cooldown times for the healing. They made a few specialist adjustments. They made a bunch of score streak adjustments as well, and these all turned out to be really good changes, and it was great to see them made before the game even launched. In addition to all of these improvements that can be made to the game before it launches, betas can also be used as a marketing tool to build hype. Call of Duty's betas have actually been criticized quite a bit for basically just being demos, because in a big sense, that's what they are. They're just designed to be a demo that also is designed to fix a bunch of things and get that server stability down. But it's often so close to launch that they can't make big changes anyways. And this sort of a demo that people have access to can definitely help sell more copies, especially when it comes to pre-orders. And this is the last pro that I wanted to talk about here before we get into the cons. This one isn't so much for the players, it's much more for the business side of things. But betas for Call of Duty generate massive amounts of pre-orders. The reason for this is they can lock the beta, or at least lock early access to the beta behind those pre-orders. So only people that pre-ordered get access to the beta, or people that pre-order can get early access to the beta and they get to play the beta for longer. This sells far more copies pre-launch than I think any other pre-order sort of bonus that they give. For me personally, I've had no interest in ever pre-ordering a Call of Duty game, but I will absolutely pre-order them if the beta is locked behind a pre-order, or even if early access is locked behind a pre-order. From a consumer standpoint, I don't necessarily like that strategy or agree with it, but you can't deny from the business side of things, it is an extremely effective strategy for generating a massive amount of pre-orders, and therefore it's a big pro for Activision and the studios to have a beta for their game. So those are the main reasons for Call of Duty having a beta, and those are some pretty strong reasons, but like I said, recently I've been seeing a lot of people against the idea of having a beta this year, so let's go over a lot of the reasoning behind that. First up, like I said, oftentimes with Call of Duty, the beta is simply far too late and too close to the launch of the game for them to make any really serious changes to the game. In some of the recent years, the betas have actually been within like a week or two of the game going gold, and this isn't enough time to make any fundamental changes to the game. Yes, they can make a bunch of balancing tweaks and they can change a few things, but at that point, it's far too late to change anything if it turns out the player base absolutely hates it. Another argument, and this is the more common one I've been seeing lately against having a beta for this year's Call of Duty, is the beta can actually kill hype for the game at the same time as building hype. And I think the biggest argument for this, especially with last year's beta, is if they release too much content throughout the beta, that doesn't really leave much up their sleeve and much excitement for the full release of the game. Back in the day with Call of Duty when they didn't have betas, I remember the day that it launched, it was the very first time that anyone was playing it, with the exception of some like YouTubers and stuff that got to play it early. But for everybody else, that was the very first time they got to play it. And for a lot of people, that day is better than Christmas. It's that exciting because you're getting your hands on this thing for the very first time. Whereas in recent years, it's still exciting, but it's not quite as exciting. You don't have that same hype built up because you've already been there. You've already played like half of the game, or in some cases more than half of the game throughout the beta. With Black Ops 4, for instance, the game launched with 10 brand new original maps. These are the maps that weren't remakes from previous Call of Duty games. Out of those 10 brand new maps, we had access to play 6 of those throughout the beta. So by the time the game launched, we've already played more than half of the new maps. Also, if I remember correctly, within the beta, we had access to almost all of the guns that were in the full build of the game. I think there was like one gun from each category that we didn't see in the beta that was there at launch. On top of that, we had access to all of the score streaks, all of the specialists, although I do understand within the context of Black Ops 4, having all of the specialists available was important because those were a key part of the game and you couldn't just restrict those within a beta, in my opinion. But I do feel that Black Ops 4 definitely revealed way too much for their beta, and this did kill some of the hype when the game actually launched because we had already played most of that game. So I definitely think there's something to that argument against betas for Call of Duty, but that's more so the execution of the beta rather than the existence of the beta itself. So those are definitely the two biggest arguments against having a beta for Call of Duty. There may be a few other smaller ones, but those are the main points that I wanted to cover today. So now I wanted to share what I feel should be done this year with Modern Warfare 4. Personally, I absolutely hope there will be a beta for Modern Warfare 4, and I do expect that there will be a beta as well, mainly for that business reason I talked about. Betas drive a massive amount of pre-order sales, and I don't see Activision passing up on that opportunity. So I do strongly feel we will have a beta at some point, but I'm a bit concerned about the timing because at this point, we normally would have had the game announced, we would have seen a trailer or two already, and we still don't even have confirmation on the title of this game. So it seems like they're really holding back, and that could mean a really late beta, or it could mean that they're just going to try and surprise us and kind of drop all of this stuff at once on us. But I'm definitely concerned about the timing, and that's one of my things that I would love to see this year, is having a beta that's like at least a month before the game goes gold, so hopefully that gives them plenty of time to make any big changes that would be very difficult to change after the game has already gone gold. As for content in the beta, I really hope they don't do what Black Ops 4 did and release way too much for us. Personally, I would like to see 3 to 4 maps maximum, and that's assuming we're going to have a really good amount of original maps at launch. But I really don't want to see any more than 4 multiplayer maps for the beta. Also, when it comes to weapons, I really think we only need like 2 to 3 SMGs, 2 to 3 assault rifles, maybe an LMG, a couple sniper rifles, a shotgun, and a pistol. I don't want to see all the guns in the beta. I want them to keep stuff up their sleeve, to keep that hype around. I think if they gave us that selection of weapons, that would give us enough to play with so we can at least like choose our play style and choose a certain style of weapon without having them release everything all at once. Like I said, when it comes to like weapon balancing and stuff, that can happen down the road after launch. That's going to happen after launch anyways. So I would prefer that they just focus on the bigger issues throughout the beta, like getting those servers down, crushing those bugs, and making the changes that the community really wants to see. I would also like to see a very limited amount of modes in this. I'd like to see maybe TDM, Domination, Search and Destroy, and then maybe like Free-for-all, for instance. Just the basics, just enough to give us a taste of what it's going to be like to play that game. I hope they don't spoil too much too fast. I didn't like what Black Ops 4 did, where they actually released Heist as part of the beta. And I get that was trying to build some hype, but I feel like that kind of took a little bit of the hype away because there were fewer new things to experience once the game actually launched, and it would have been nice to be surprised by that Heist game mode at launch for the game. In addition to this, like I said, I fully expect Activision to lock the beta behind a pre-order bonus, or at least part of the beta. So I'm not really going to argue against that because it's not going to change. However, what I am hoping is, assuming we have like a 2-weekend beta, which I think is the best, so we get a couple different iterations of the game, either make it so the first weekend is a closed beta for people that pre-ordered, and then the second weekend is open, or give people that pre-ordered access to the beta on like the Thursday, for instance, and then on the Saturday, open it up to anybody so that anybody can play that beta, so they get the most amount of feedback and data possible. And also, I feel like that would end up driving more sales because people that probably weren't going to buy the game and definitely weren't going to pre-order the game, it gives them a chance to get their hands on it, and maybe they'll end up really liking it and buying that game. So that's what I'm personally hoping when it comes to the beta for Modern Warfare 4. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what's your opinion on all of this? First off, do you want to see a beta in the first place, or do you think they should scrap it and then just surprise us with everything at launch? And if you do want a beta, what sort of stuff would you like to see throughout the beta? Let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Yeah.